teach the high reliability strategies. The first two to authenticity, and the second, and two more to scaffold. The second outcome is for us as a whole group to develop a framework for giving feedback. So how will we give feedback to our colleagues about how well their lesson has gone? And the feedback has to really be, did it help the students see where to start? Did it help them make the critical links? Did it help them talk about the ideas? Because we're wanting this explicit focus on learning. Did it help them talk about the ideas afterwards and really distill out the key ideas? And the third aspect, for you to look at how you will give advice about taking a lesson, taking a content and helping your colleagues see how they can use it. I would like to end up with a set of points for each of these. Is this all right? We'll distribute. So we'll all end up with it together. Okay, so could we say have until 10:05, just putting together what you're going to look for in the teaching of your colleagues at the table. Once you've decided with the scaffolding, just to remind you, we're going to go through the getting knowledge ready, the 3 phases, the while reading, the reading aloud, the vocab, the visualising, paraphrasing and so on, and then the reviewing. We're wanting to teach each strategy. 2 of them we're going to look at scaffolding, and 2 we're going to look at cueing to independence. Is this all right? 2 to scaffold, 2 to independence. And we're going to do, if it's okay, the scaffolding ones first. And with the scaffolding, just to remind you, those 3 first, getting knowledge ready. Because even though you're going to want the people to paraphrase, you might need to do the getting knowledge ready really quickly, so they're in the context. You're going to need to have the people, before you can do the paraphrasing, you're going to need to work on some vocab, some synonyms. And so you're going to need to make sure your students sitting at the rest of your table can actually they can actually work out how to say unfamiliar words, and also that they can work out the meanings, or you're going to need to scaffold them to do that. Now, the reason why you're going to need the reading aloud for the paraphrasing and visualising, if a child reads a sentence aloud and reads it to some extent disfluently, they need to read it again. Is this okay? If a child reads a sentence aloud disfluently, they need to read it again. That's okay. I mean, we can say, okay, that's great. Would you mind just saying it again? Or you might read it after them, like I usually do. I say it after them. And then, could you say it again before we go on? That was great. Say it again. Just so we work on getting the oral fluency. We need the fluency in order to be able to lift it further. And then we've got the other cueing. Now, one thing you might be looking for when you're evaluating your colleagues is how well they actually review at the end of the section. How well does the person doing the demonstration get you to review your knowledge? Get you to say what you've learned, get you to visualise it. And we won't have time for the automatising. Is that okay for the scaffolding? And then the next part was the building in the vocalising, saying what it was. This is when you're teaching it to automaticity, where you're getting them to be able to say what they did, how it helped them, say what they're going to do, and then practice. Okay, so was the issue that potentially some children could be bored by this? Okay, so we need to look at how we make these activities less boring so that the teaching that was being provided at the table didn't stimulate you to want to know more about it. So one key issue for all of us is, and I guess this is a key part of our teaching altogether, at a very early stage in teaching any topic, is to have students being challenged by the topic, trying to present the idea in a challenging way. If I'm wanting Year 8 students to learn how to factorise quadratics, I have to challenge them. I have to make them really drool wanting to know the answer. That's critical, because a lot of the knowledge, and I guess this is true of a lot of secondary teaching, that we don't actually challenge the students to want to know. And there is, I guess, a real skill in that. I'm a bit loath to attribute that to the high reliability strategies, because I don't think that's to do with the strategies. I think it's to do with the reason why we're wanting the students to use them. Now, one high reliability strategy actually explicitly targets this, and that is teaching the children to ask questions of the text. Because when you ask a question, you're motivated to want to know more. It interests me that in a lot of secondary classrooms, when I've actually worked on some of these strategies, the students have been so unfamiliar with reading a sentence and saying what question it answers that they almost wish the floor would open up. They're used to being asked questions. They're not used to being asked, what question do I think this could answer? Now, remember, at the getting knowledge ready phase, we're having the students say, what questions do you think could be answered by this text? That's a critical getting knowledge ready strategy. That's to get the students engaged in the learning. Now, if in fact your teaching or the teaching you witnessed didn't do that, then one comment that we need to make sure we have on our way of evaluating every person putting in place these actions is, did they have the students generate questions before they began to read? Because that is a key high reliability strategy. A second key strategy is, what do you think the text is going to tell you? What will you know at the end? If those things are not done, then it may become very mechanistic. The whole purpose of the getting knowledge ready strategies is to build new knowledge. And you'll only build new knowledge if you've got questions. Does this all make sense? So that they could be points, Linda, that say the issue of boredom really needs to be confronted, and it needs to be dealt with through applying the high reliability strategy effectively. The getting knowledge ready strategy, what do they know about it? What questions do they think are going to be answered? Now, all the vocab stuff as well is appropriate, but that's not going to target the want to know. That's going to mean they're unloading their key words. We're wanting them to say, these are the things I don't know the answer to and I want to. When I'm teaching, look, when I'm teaching mini beasts in grade 3, I want the kids to tell me how often they've heard a beetle sneeze. Do we hear beetles sneeze? Do we hear worms panting and puffing when they wriggle? Can they breathe? Do they have lungs? What if I told you insects breathe through holes in their body? Grade 3, why doesn't all their insides ooze out? When I see a little earwig wriggling along, if it's breathing through holes in its body, why aren't all its little insides dribbling out? How do they breathe? How do earthworms breathe? How often have you seen 2 goldfish racing in an aquarium, panting for air? How do they get their air? That's the sort of thing I'm talking about. That 1 or 2 minute dialogue should be sufficient to cue a lot of the kids into wanting to know. Am I making sense here? Okay, that's great. So